Not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. Mark Manson. Welcome, traveler. Today, we're setting aside the polished masks, the noise of toxic positivity, and the obsession with always being extraordinary. This isn't a tale of perfect heroes or fairy tale endings. This is the gritty, sarcastic, and refreshingly honest philosophy of one man who dared to say what we've all secretly wondered. What if the problem isn't that we care too little, but that we care way too much about the wrong things? Welcome to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, a book that throws a middle finger at the glossy self-help industry, punches toxic positivity in the gut, and drags us down to the messy, painful, liberating truth. Life is hard. You're not special. You're going to die. And that's where freedom begins. About the book published in 2016, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck became a cultural phenomenon. In a sea of think positive and manifest abundance, Mark Manson offered a stark alternative. Face your limitations. Choose your pain wisely. Stop giving your energy to things that don't matter. It's not a book for the faint-hearted. It's blunt, it swears, it drags your ego through the mud. And yet, paradoxically, it's a deeply kind book, because buried beneath its brutal truths is something very rare: compassion without fluff. The kind of honesty you'd get from a real friend who doesn't sugarcoat your reflection but won't let you drown either. About the author, Mark Manson. Mark Manson is not a traditional self-help guru. He's a former dating coach turned author, thinker, and known-sense philosopher of modern life. With a background in psychology and a sharp wit, Manson blends personal stories, brutal honesty, and unexpected depth. His message: we all have limited fucks to give. The key to a good life is choosing what to give them to. His writing, while irreverent, is deeply influenced by Stoicism, existentialism, Buddhism, and modern psychology. He invites readers to abandon the pursuit of being perpetually happy and instead ask, what am I willing to suffer for? Central themes and questions. This isn't just a book. It's a philosophical wake-up call disguised as a punchline. The core themes weave together into a single, transformative idea. We all have a limited number of fucks to give. So, choose wisely. Choose values worth suffering for. Choose meaning over comfort. Suffering is inevitable, but not all suffering is equal. Life will hurt, but we get to choose what's worth hurting for. Happiness is not found in avoiding problems, but in solving better ones. Want a better life? Want more meaning? Get better problems. You are not special, and that's a relief. The pressure to be extraordinary is crushing. Embracing our ordinariness is liberating. Responsibility greater than blame, even if it's not your fault. It's still your life. You choose what to do with it. Certainty is the enemy of growth. You're wrong. So am I. Embrace uncertainty and you'll grow. Rejection and boundaries create meaning. You can't say yes to everything. Real value comes from the things you say no to. Death gives life urgency. Confronting your mortality makes every decision matter more, not less. The world we're entering, in like a fantasy epic or historical novel, this story takes place in the world you woke up in this morning. Its villains aren't dragons or dystopias, but numb scrolling, endless comparison, and the subtle, constant pressure to be everything to everyone. It's a world where social media teaches us to chase likes instead of values, where our self-worth gets tied to productivity, appearance, or how unique we are, where we numb real problems by binging content or buying things we don't need. This book says enough pretending, enough hollow affirmations. Time to ask the hard questions. What makes this book different? Most self-help books aim to fix you. Mark Manson begins with a simple premise: you are not broken. Life is. He doesn't ask you to be fearless, successful, rich, or relentlessly positive. Instead, he asks, what do you care about? Is that thing actually worth caring about? This isn't about not caring at all. It's about caring better, with intention, with boundaries, with self-awareness. And that's what we'll explore chapter by chapter. How to listen to this series. This audiobook-style journey isn't meant to be rushed. Each chapter in this book presents a lens of filter to examine your own beliefs, your values, your reflexes. As we move through them, together, you may feel challenged, maybe even annoyed. That's okay. Lean into that. Whether you're listening from your desk, your bed, or your favorite midnight walk, remember, this is your invitation to let go of the superficial, and start asking what actually matters. A word of caution and encouragement: this book won't tell you to smile more, won't give you a morning routine that guarantees success, won't promise happiness in 7 steps, but it will help you choose your life not based on what feels good, but on what's truly meaningful. And that's a far rarer gift. Chapter 1: The Feedback Loop from Hell. The desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. Mark Manson. Let's be honest. We've all been there, lying awake at 2 a.m., heart pounding, thoughts spinning out of control. You're not just anxious, you're anxious about being anxious. You're not just insecure, you feel guilty for being insecure. And the harder you try to fix it, the worse it all becomes. That, right there, is the feedback loop from hell. And that's exactly where Mark Manson begins. Before offering any advice on how to live a better life, he insists we acknowledge the messy reality of how we often live now. Not because he enjoys rubbing our noses in discomfort, but because there's power in calling things by their true names. What he identifies as a psychological trapecycle, where we care too much about the fact that we care too much. It's meta-emotion mayhem, and it's a trap we all fall into more often than we admit. Manson paints the loop clearly. You feel bad. Then you notice that you feel bad, which makes you feel bad about feeling bad, so you feel even worse. It's a downward spiral made heavier by the culture we live in, one that idolizes perpetual happiness. Social media and pop psychology scream at us to be grateful, think positive, find your joy. And when we can't, we feel like failures. But here's the twist. Feeling bad isn't the real problem. It's our resistance to feeling bad that wrecks us. That paradox that trying to avoid negative emotions only makes them stronger is the heartbeat of this chapter. The more we push against discomfort, the more it pushes back. Why? Because resistance sharpens focus, and focus gives energy. What we fight gains strength. So the real solution isn't to shut your feelings down, but to lean into them calmly, curiously. Stop giving a fuck about the fact that you feel anxious, or down, or lost. The moment you stop treating those feelings like threats, they begin to loosen their grip. From there, Manson turns his sights on the glossy world of self-help and personal growth, hacking away at it with ruthless honesty. Think happy thoughts. Visualize success. Crush your goals. They sound empowering, and at times they are, but often they come wrapped in a hidden, poisonous message. You are not enough. You must fix yourself to be worthy. That message sends us sprinting into endless cycles of self-improvement morning routines. Productivity hacks, guided meditations, dopamine fasts only to collapse into exhaustion and self-doubt. Because at its core, every act of that frantic improvement whispers the same accusation: you are broken. Manson isn't anti-growth, but he's absolutely against the idea that growth must begin in self-loathing. That's not real transformation, it's an act of erasure. You don't build a stronger version of yourself by hating the one you already are. To underline this, Manson introduces us to Charles Bukowski, a grimy, drunken, perpetually failing writer who, despite it all, became a literary success. His tombstone reads, "Don't try." It's not because trying is bad, but because the effort. To be something you're not, whether it's to be admired, enlightened, or successful, can be a subtle form of denial. Bukowski didn't mask his flaws, he displayed them. He didn't rise above his brokenness, he wrote from it. And people loved him not because he triumphed, but because he was honest. This is where Manson's message crystallizes. The less you care about appearing perfect, the more real you become. This is the subtle art of not giving a fuck, not a descent into apathy, but a radical act of discernment. Because here's the truth. You only have so much energy, So much attention, so many fucks to give. If you waste them on every small thing, what? Strangers think of your clothes, how many likes your vacation photos get. Whether you're climbing the right career ladder, you'll end up depleted, disillusioned, and disconnected from what truly matters. So what does it actually mean to not give a fuck? Doesn't mean becoming callous or indifferent. Doesn't mean shutting out the world or refusing to care about anyone. It means choosing wisely. It means not letting your self-worth be hijacked by bad moods, awkward interactions, or the latest opinion on social media. It means being okay with the full range of your emotions: sadness, anger, fear, without always trying to fix or improve them. This, Manson says, is emotional maturity. It's not about escaping pain, but about choosing which pain is worth enduring. Because you can't live a pain-free life, but you can live a meaningful one. And that begins with stopping the spiral. The spiral of being ashamed of your shame, anxious about your anxiety, angry that you're angry. As the chapter nears its close, Manson reminds us of something we desperately need to hear. Life is supposed to be hard sometimes. That isn't a glitch in your mindset. It's the cost of being human. The sadness you feel, the fear, the confusion, the insecurity, they're not flaws, they're data. They're signs that you care, that you're alive, that you're engaged in something that matters. And ironically, the moment you stop freaking out about those feelings, the moment you let them be, the more peace you find. So no, this chapter doesn't offer a magic solution. What it offers is something deeper: permission. Permission to be messy, permission to feel, permission to stop hustling for your worth and just be honest. That, Manson says, is where real change begins. Not in trying to be amazing, but in daring to be real. So tonight, if your mind is racing, if you're feeling anxious about your anxiety, frustrated that you're not calm, or upset that you're not inspired, just stop. Take a breath. And instead of giving a fuck about all that noise, give a fuck about this. You are human, you feel. And that's okay. In fact, it might just be the most important thing about you. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. Life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family. Mark Manson, what if happiness wasn't the point? What if the constant striving for joy, for peace, for some perfectly curated life was actually the very reason we feel so deeply unsatisfied? That's where Mark Manson takes us in Chapter 2, a chapter that gently but firmly pulls the rug out from under one of our most cherished beliefs, that happiness is a destination we're meant to chase, find, and hold on to. It's not. And the very act of trying to make it so is, ironically, the problem. We've been sold a quiet lie, subtle myth, that if we just hustle enough, think positively enough, land the perfect job, meet the perfect partner, find the perfect apartment, or download the perfect mindfulness app, we'll finally arrive at happiness, as if happiness is someplace you reach, as if it's a permanent state you can just unpack your bags in and live happily ever after. Manson calls this what it is, a delusion. He argues that happiness is not a goal or a solution. It's a byproduct. It's the emotional reward we get for engaging with and solving meaningful problems. But the moment we start trying to pursue happiness directly, it becomes like trying to fall asleep by trying really hard to fall asleep. The effort defeats the result. It slips through your fingers the moment you reach for it. To be clear, Manson isn't suggesting we should be miserable. He's not glorifying despair. What he's saying is that pain is a permanent feature of life. It's not an error in the codites part of the code. It's discomfort, uncertainty, loss, fear, rejection. These things will always exist in one form or another. What matters isn't whether we suffer, it's what kind of suffering we choose. That's the heart of this chapter. Happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them, not denying them. It's not outsourcing them to someone else, but confronting them, wrestling with them, solving them with our own minds and hands, one day at a time. That's what gives life meaning. Manson draws a razor-sharp distinction here. Not all problems are created equal. There's a profound difference between being heartbroken because your art wasn't understood by the world and being heartbroken because your Wi-Fi lagged during a video. There's a difference between being exhausted from staying up all night to care for your sick child and being exhausted from indecision about which Netflix show to binge next. It's not about eliminating stress from life. It's about earning stress it's worth enduring. He poses a powerful question. What are you willing to suffer for? The answer to that question defines your values. It defines your direction. It defines your life. It's because happiness, Manson insists again, is found not in comfort, but in solving problems. And the key word here is solving. If you're avoiding your problems, or pretending you don't have any, you're not avoiding misery or ensuring it. This isn't just philosophical musing. It's backed by psychological truth. We are wired for struggle. Our brains crave effort, challenge, focus, not passive comfort, not endless convenience. That's why people who win the lottery or retire early, expecting bliss, often find depression instead. They've lost the meaningful problems that used to give them purpose. On the flip side, someone who faces hardship and works through even part of it, that person feels pride. They feel fulfillment. They feel real. Manson then introduces two categories of problems. First, there are good problems, those grounded in healthy values, personal responsibility, and long-term goals. These might include working through a tough conversation in a relationship that matters, committing to fitness for health and longevity, or launching a project that challenges your creativity and resolve. Then there are bad problems, born out of avoidance, ego, superficial validation, obsessing over likes on social media, panicking when someone doesn't text back fast enough, feeling jealousy over someone's perfectly filtered Instagram highlight reel. The difference isn't in difficulty, it's in depth. A hard life full of good problems is far more satisfying than an easy life full of empty ones. Then Manson turns his focus to an even more subtle villain, the pressure to be happy. Our culture is saturated with it. Ads whisper that happiness is one purchase away. Influencers post daily about how every sunrise healed their soul. Motivational speakers preach that with the right mindset and enough manifestation, you can unlock limitless joy. It all sounds inspiring until it doesn't, until you're having a rough day. Start to believe you're somehow failing at life just because you're not happy. That's the real damage. When we internalize the belief that happiness is the goal, then not being happy feels like personal failure. So what do we do when happiness becomes a burden? We numb, we distract, we scroll endlessly, we drink, we compare, we avoid. But none of it helps because we're not solving the root problems. We're just trying to escape them. And that only compounds the suffering. Here comes the empowering pivot of the chapter. Emotions aren't truths. They're not commands. They're not verdicts about your worth or success. They're just biological signals. They're your body and mind's way of pointing toward areas of life that need attention or change. That's it. And when we stop treating emotions, especially painful ones, as enemies, we can begin to see them for what they are: information. So Manson encourages us to shift the question from how do I feel better to what is this discomfort trying to show me? What am I avoiding? What conflict is unresolved inside me? It's the real problem, and is it worth solving? When we move from resistance to engagement, everything changes. Near the end of the chapter, Manson plants a seed for a major theme he'll explore later: responsibility. Even though we don't always choose our circumstances, illness, betrayal, economic hardship, we do have the power to choose how we interpret and respond to those circumstances. That's where true control begins. It's where personal power starts to grow. It's just a hint here, but it's a promise of what's to come. So let's pull back. Let's summarize not the facts, but the truth underneath them. Happiness isn't comfort. It's not the absence of problems. It's not perfection or effortless ease. Happiness is found in engaging with problems that matter, in choosing your suffering, in waking up every day and facing a struggle that's aligned with your values, your identity, your goals. When you do that, you don't resent the struggle. Embrace it, because that struggle becomes a signal that you're on the right path. It becomes a path to growth, and that growth, that alignment, is a far deeper and more sustainable form of happiness than any surface-level pleasure. So Here's the question that lingers like a quiet drum beat as the chapter ends. What problems are you choosing to live with? Because as Manson leaves us to consider, the quality of your life is defined not by the ease of your days, but by the quality of your problems. Chapter 3. You are not special. Entitlement strips the world of its mystery and wonder. It demands that the world bend to your will, and it screams when it doesn't. Entitlement is lazy, it's ungrateful, and it's self-absorbed. Mark Manson. We live in a world obsessed with the idea of being special. From the time we can form memories, we're told to be extraordinary, to stand out, to be successful, to be unique. The goal becomes clear. Rise above average in every category: talent, intelligence, looks, wealth, charisma, spiritual depth, romantic success, personal branding. The result is a culture fixated on never being ordinary. But what if that very pressure to be special is what's making us so deeply unhappy? Mark Manson doesn't sugarcoat this, doesn't mask it in soft language or cloak it in encouraging mantras. He delivers the truth with raw clarity. You are not special. And rather than this being a cruel jab, he argues it's actually the first piece of freedom you've likely been missing all along. Manson opens this chapter with a sharp observation: we are drowning in entitlement. Not just the loud, arrogant kind of entitlement we see on reality shows or Twitter arguments, but a deeper, sneakier form. Entitlement wears many faces. It says, I'm better than others, so I deserve more. But it also says, I'm worse than others, so I deserve special treatment. It can whisper, my problems are more tragic than yours. My pain is deeper. My struggle is more heroic. Or it can boast, my gifts are more important. My time is more valuable. I shouldn't have to struggle like everyone else. Entitlement, Manson says, isn't just a superiority complex. It's the belief that you, in some way, deserve exemption from the rules that govern the rest of us. And that belief breeds resentment, laziness, and disconnection from reality. From here, Manson takes aim at the culture of exceptionalism we've grown up in, calls out the endless parade of affirmations we were raised on. You can be anything. You're amazing. You're destined for greatness. While well-meaning, these messages plant a dangerous seed, the idea that anything short of extraordinary is a kind of failure. So we grow up terrified of being average. We panic if our careers don't take off by we feel like imposters if our relationships are healthy but not magical. We feel like we're wasting our lives if we haven't found our passion or made an impact on the world yet. But the truth is, most people are average by definition. That's not an insult, it's just math. And the refusal to accept this reality fuels our anxiety. Manson's argument is simple and liberating. Once you stop fearing mediocrity, you're free to focus on what actually matters. Not the illusion of success, but the pursuit of truth. Not the spotlight, but sincerity. Not applause, but presence. He doesn't stop there. This chapter also unpacks another form of entitlement, one that masquerades as self-loathing. It shows up as no one understands me, or nothing ever works for me, or I've had it harder than anyone else. At first glance, this looks like humility, or even vulnerability. But Manson points out that it's still a form of ego, just reversed, still rooted in the belief that you are uniquely different, exceptionally broken. That the rules of human nature don't apply to you because your suffering is singular. But it's not. You're not alone in your pain. You're not special in your suffering. You're human. And the moment you let go of the fantasy that your pain is more noble than anyone else's, you open the door to healing, because you realize others have walked this same dark road, and some have even made it through. To illustrate this, Manson shares his own story. He reflects on years of emotional struggle and therapy, years he spent believing he was smarter, more sensitive, more complicated than everyone around him. That belief gave him a false sense of superiority, but also left him deeply lonely and disconnected. What finally helped him grow wasn't a revelation of brilliance. It was the humble decision to accept that he was just another flawed human being. Not special, not cursed, just normal. And from that place of ordinariness, real growth could finally begin. He makes a powerful statement. The truth is that there's nothing to be proud of in being average. But there's also nothing to be ashamed of. We are all average at most things. That doesn't mean we're worthless, it means we're normal. And normal is a solid, honest foundation. It's a place you can build something real from. One of the most important insights in this chapter is the connection between high expectations and low self-esteem. When you're constantly measuring your life against impossible standards, someone else's success, beauty, wealth, or enlightenment, you inevitably fall short. You begin to feel like your ordinary life is a failure, that your steady job, your imperfect relationship, your simple joys are not enough, that your pain must mean you're broken instead of just alive. That's when the spiral begins. Chase validation just to feel worthy. You avoid effort because it might reveal that you're not exceptional. You numb your feelings, deflect your responsibilities, blame others, and demand shortcuts. But none of that leads to meaning, real meaning. Manson argues comes from a completely different place. It doesn't come from being exceptional. It comes from grounded values, consistent effort, and the courage to take responsibility for your choices in quiet, ordinary areas of life. And what happens when you stop needing to be special? Relief. You stop performing, comparing. You stop spending so much energy trying to prove your worth to the world. And for the first time, you create the conditions for actual growth. You become open to learning. You become okay with being a beginner. You become willing to fail, to struggle, to look foolish, to suck at something for a while. And that is the soil where real transformation takes root. At the core of all this is what Manson calls radical humility. It means admitting the things we often try to hide from, that we don't know everything, and that we're not entitled to success, that we're not the only ones suffering. That effort is non-negotiable. But far from being a defeat, humility becomes our greatest strength. Open space for patience, kindness, and resilience. It makes us curious, teachable, and honest. And in a world obsessed with being seen and celebrated, humility becomes a quiet, revolutionary act. The chapter ends with a sobering but strangely comforting truth. You are probably not going to change the world, will likely not become famous. In 500 years, no one will remember your name. And that's okay. Because real meaning doesn't come from being known by the world. It comes from being present in your world. Present with your values. Present with your people. Present with the problems you've chosen to solve. You are not special. And because of that, you are finally free. Free to learn. Free to fail. Free to love. Free to belong. Free to be a part of something bigger than your ego. And according to Manson, that is where the good life really begins. Chapter 4. The value of suffering. Our struggles determine our successes. So choose your struggles wisely, my friend. Mark Manson. Everyone wants to feel better. They want to feel less stressed, less anxious, less lost. We chase peace, happiness, and confidence, whatever version of better we think is currently missing from our lives. But here's the problem. Mark Manson says, we never stop to ask why we want to feel better. More importantly, what we're actually willing to endure to get there. That question, why do you suffer, and what are you suffering for? The core of this chapter. Manson begins by slicing through the fluff of modern comfort culture with a hard truth. Suffering is unavoidable. Not because the universe is cruel, but because suffering is where meaning is made. It's the forge of depth, purpose, and fulfillment. We admire athletes because they've suffered for their strength and skill. We respect artists because they've poured years of frustration and failure into their work. We love our closest friends and partners, not just because of joy shared, but because of the pain endured together. The heart of the matter, Manson argues, is this. The quality of your life is not determined by your successes, but by the quality of your problems and your willingness to face them head-on. So what makes a good problem? Manson is quick to clarify. It's not about whether a problem is glamorous or epic. Good problem is something grounded in reality, something constructive, and most crucially, something self-generated, born out of your own choices and values. Learning how to be more honest in a relationship, good problem. Obsessing over why your latest Instagram post didn't go viral? Not so much. Fixing your financial habits? Good problem. Wishing to be rich without doing anything differently? A problem, just a fantasy. Manson insists that problems are not the enemy. They are the path. You don't find meaning by avoiding them. You find meaning by choosing the right ones. Here, the chapter takes a deeper turn into the role of values. Our suffering, Manson says, is directly determined by what we value. If you care deeply about being liked, every unfollow or criticism will sting. If you value integrity, then every time you live in a little you'll feel off-center. So the question is no longer just why we suffer, but because of what. Are your values causing you to suffer in meaningful, character-shaping ways, or are they trapping you in shallow, fragile cycles of pain? To help navigate that question, Manson breaks down the difference between good and bad values. Good values are rooted in reality, socially constructive, immediate, and within your control. Examples include honesty, curiosity, responsibility, creativity, and humility. Bad values, by contrast, are superficial and based on external approval or things you can't control. Examples: wanting to be liked by everyone, chasing constant happiness, always needing to be right, being the center of attention. Bad values lead to bad problems, and bad problems lead to unnecessary suffering. You're not just in pain, you're in pain for no good reason. Zooming in, Manson explains how values function, like the operating system behind our suffering. If your values are unhelpful, you'll create unhelpful problems. Value being admired? Then every time you're overlooked, you'll suffer. Value being right? Then every disagreement becomes a battle. Value comfort above all else? And every challenge feels like oppression? But what if you valued growth instead? Then every failure becomes a chance to learn. What if you valued compassion? Then even your own pain can be transformed into empathy. What if you valued presence? Then every distraction becomes a gentle nudge back to the moment. The kind of values you hold determine the flavor of your suffering, and that changes everything. To bring this abstract idea into sharp focus, Manson tells the story of Dave Mustaine, the original guitarist for Metallica. Mustaine was kicked out of the band just before they exploded into stardom. Angry and humiliated, he vowed to prove them wrong, formed a new band, Megadeth, and went on to sell over 25 million records, becoming a legend in his own right. And yet, in interviews, Mustaine admitted he still felt like a failure. Why? Because his standard of success wasn't internal growth or artistic integrity. It was revenge. It was being more successful than Metallica. His values, rooted in ego, comparison, and bitterness, ensured that no matter how high he climbed, he was still losing in his own mind. Then Manson contrasts this with Pete Best, the original drummer for the Beatles, who was fired just before they became one of the most famous bands in history. Years later, Best said in interviews that it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He went on to live a peaceful life filled with love, family, and quiet happiness. Why? Because his values weren't tied to revenge or recognition. They were tied to fulfillment, acceptance, and gratitude. Same kind of suffering. Two different value systems. It's radically different outcomes. So how do we choose better values? Manson lays out a framework. Strong values are rooted in personal agency, focused on process rather than outcome, grounded in reality, and resilient in the face of chaos. He invites readers to ask themselves hard but necessary questions. What? Am I proud of when no one's watching? What am I willing to fail at again and again? What problems do I keep coming back to, even when they're hard? If a value can survive your worst day, it's probably a good one. This brings us to the full circle truth of the chapter. Pain becomes powerful when it serves a purpose. You won't mind the ache in your muscles if you deeply value health. You'll endure the anxiety of vulnerability if you value deep intimacy. You'll embrace the discomfort of performance if you value honest self-expression. The goal isn't to escape pain, it's to put it to work, to make it serve something that matters. In the final reflection, Manson strips everything down to its essence. You're going to suffer. That's non-negotiable. You'll face rejection, discomfort, confusion, boredom, uncertainty, and failure. Life does not offer a version that's pain-free. There is no spiritual hack, productivity system, or mindset trick that can erase that. But what you can choose, what you must choose, is what your suffering will stand for. Manson doesn't. Ask, what do you want? That's easy. Everyone wants success, love, peace, money. The better question is, what pain are you willing to endure? What are you willing to struggle through, over and over, because it's worth it to you? Because in the end, it's not your dreams or your goals that define your life. It's your pain. It's how you engage with it. It's how you frame it. It's what you let it shape in you. Choose your suffering wisely, and you just might build a life that actually means something. Chapter 5. You are always choosing. We don't always control what happens to us. But we always control how we interpret what happens to us and how we respond. Mark Manson, there are moments in life when things go deeply, unforgettably wrong. You lose someone you love. You're betrayed by someone you trusted. You're laid off without a warning, with no safety net. You grow up in chaos, surrounded by pain that was never your fault. In these moments, it's natural to feel robbed, like life took something sacred from you without your permission. And the voice inside you cries out, I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for this. I didn't deserve this. Mark Manson doesn't argue with you. He agrees your pain is real, and the events that caused it may have been completely outside your control. But that's not the end of the story. This chapter pivots on one critical truth. Even when you didn't choose what happened to you, you're still choosing how you respond to it. Always. Even when it doesn't feel like it. This idea leads Manson to draw a crucial distinction. Responsibility is not the same as fault. You are not always at fault for what happens to you. Terrible. Things happen to good people all the time, and assigning blame doesn't heal anything. But you are always responsible for how you choose to interpret what happened, and how you act from here. That gap between the event and your response is the only true freedom you will ever have. And yet most of us are asleep to it. We move through life reacting instead of choosing, trapped in patterns we didn't consciously design, forgetting we always hold the reins even in the smallest, quietest ways. To bring this idea home, Manson explains that we each live in two realities. The first is the external world, the facts of what happens to us, what others say and do, what life throws our way. The second is our internal world, the meaning we assign to those events. Here's the twist. The only one we truly control is the second. You don't get to choose being cheated on, losing your job, or being born into a broken family. But you do get to choose what those events mean to you. You decide whether they'll define your identity or push you to grow. You decide whether you'll collapse or rebuild. It's not easy, far from it, but it is yours. And the reclamation of that ownership starts with a decision. A subtle but seismic shift toward power. Manson brings us back to values again, anchoring this truth. Every time you react to something, you're revealing which value is winning inside you. Do you value being right, or do you value learning something new? Do you choose comfort or long-term growth? Do you default to blame or to action? These are micro choices, often made unconsciously, but they shape the architecture of your life. And the kicker is you're already choosing. You've always been choosing, whether or not you've been aware of it. Awareness doesn't create choice. It simply illuminates the ones you're already making. To show the power of radical responsibility, Manson tells the story of William James, often called the father of American psychology. As a young man, James suffered from such deep depression that he considered suicide. Then, he made a private pact for 1 year. He would act as if he were 100% responsible for everything in his life, even the things that weren't his fault. He would take total ownership of his reactions, his energy, his direction. If at the end of the year, his life hadn't improved, he would end it. But something changed. That choice, that raw, deliberate responsibility, sparked a transformation. He stopped waiting for rescue, stopped replaying the past. He started acting. He chose new values. He rebuilt meaning from the inside out. And in doing so, he changed. Not just his life, but the world of psychology. We all carry pain stories, narratives that begin with injustice and leave emotional scars. These stories are real. They're valid. They don't end at trauma. They only end when you decide what they mean. And that's a choice you make every single day. You the person things happen to, or the person who acts in response. Are you the victim of pain, or the author of purpose that grew from it? Responsibility doesn't mean blame, it means freedom. It means rewriting the narrative from the inside out. Sometimes we tell ourselves we have no choice. I had to stay. In that relationship, I had no other career path. I had to pretend everything was fine. These phrases sound like truth, but often they're protective lies. No, you didn't have to do any of those things. You might have been afraid. You might have faced consequences. You might have felt unsure. But you chose, and when you deny that truth, you also deny your power to choose something better. Manson is unequivocal. The moment you admit that you are always choosing is the moment you start to take your life back. This chapter also confronts one of the most uncomfortable elements of modern culture, the rise of victimhood as social currency. We live in an age where being oppressed, misunderstood, or traumatized can sometimes bring attention, validation, and power. Manson is careful here. He doesn't deny the reality of suffering, doesn't dismiss trauma, but he does warn against letting pain become your identity. When we turn our suffering into performance, we define ourselves by it, and demand that others acknowledge it constantly, we give away our agency. Victimhood, if held onto too long, becomes a cage. It makes the world responsible for our healing, which is a trap because the world doesn't owe us that. No one else can do that work. Only we can choose it. So what do we do with all this heavy truth? Manson offers something simple. We start small. You may not control your boss, but you can choose how you communicate today. Circumstances of your childhood, you can choose how you parent your own children. You may not be able to change your partner's past, but you can choose how you show up in this moment. Each of these small shifts is a fork in the road. Chance to stop reacting and start deciding. That's where real agency lives, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet, consistent practice of choice. In closing, Manson brings us to the most honest reflection of all. You've suffered, maybe more than people know, maybe more than feels fair. And it wasn't your fault, but this is your life. No one else will live it for you. No one else can reach into the mess and decide what it will all mean. No one else can take your pain and sculpt it into purpose. No one else can rise in the morning and whisper, "I'm still choosing." That's your job. That's your power. And every time you remember it, every time you stop to own even one small response, you move one step closer to the life you actually want. Not because it's easy, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I. The more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it. Mark Manson lets begin with a blunt confession. You are wrong. You're wrong about many things, about life, about yourself, about the people you love. You're wrong about what you think will make you happy, and about what you believe is true or false. And here's the twist. So is Mark Manson. So am I. So is everyone else. This is not a bug. In the system, it's a built-in feature of being human. And as soon as you accept this, it truly accepts it to gain something profound. The moment you stop clinging to the desperate need to always be right, that's when growth actually begins. This chapter opens by taking aim at something most of us don't realize we're addicted to: the need for certainty. We build our identities and lives around stories about who we are, what's good, what's bad, what's possible. These stories create a sense of security. They make us feel smart and in control. But that sense of control is a lie. Certainty is a trap. Because when you need to be right all the time, you begin to dismiss information that contradicts your worldview. You avoid experiences that challenge your identity. You double down on your mistakes not because they're right, but because admitting you're wrong would bruise your ego. Stop learning. You stop growing. And ironically, in trying to be correct, you end up more lost. Manson draws a powerful insight from science. Every belief is simply a working hypothesis. Nothing is absolute. What we accept as truth today is merely what has survived our questioning. So far, there was a time when people believed the earth was flat, that draining blood cured diseases, that women were intellectually inferior, that smoking was good for you, and that Pluto was a planet. Every generation holds truths that later become laughably wrong. So why would our personal truths, our beliefs about life and self, be any different? This doesn't mean you shouldn't believe in anything, but you should hold your beliefs with open palms, not clenched fists. You must stay ready to question, to unlearn, to evolve. Here's where things get personal. The more closely a belief is tied to your identity, the harder it is to let go of. Manson explains this emotional truth with clear examples. The man who can't admit he's a poor listener because he needs to see himself as kind. The woman who avoids feedback at work because her self-worth is built on being smart. These aren't logic problems, they're identity problems. We protect our self-image, even when it costs us growth, peace, and truth. When your self-image is built on being right, your identity becomes brittle. It shatters easily. However, if your identity is built on being curious, on staying open and questioning yourself, that's when you become powerful. Manson shares a raw story from his own life to make this real. He talks about a breakup that left him reeling. For months, he clung to the belief that she had wronged him, that he had been the good guy and she was simply flawed. But as he dug deeper, peeling back his ego and pain, a harder truth emerged. He had been emotionally distant. He avoided vulnerability. He ignored her needs. The breakup wasn't just her fault. The story he'd told himself about being blameless was wrong. And as long as he clung to that story, he couldn't heal. The moment he said, "Maybe I was wrong," something shifted. That simple admission cracked the door open for real growth. This leads to one of Manson's most powerful assertions: maturity equals doubt. The more certain you are, the less mature you probably are. True maturity means you can hold opposing ideas in your mind without panic. You seek correction instead of dodging it. You update your beliefs when they no longer serve reality. Manson even redefines intelligence not as how much you know, or how clever your arguments are, but as your willingness to be wrong. To say, "I used to think that, but I've changed," that's real strength. He also tackles the danger of idolizing others, what he calls kill your heroes. When we blindly worship mentors, political leaders, celebrities, or even our past selves, we stop thinking critically, justify their flaws, we ignore their contradictions, imitate them instead of examining ourselves. Manson isn't suggesting cynicism or distrust, he's advocating discernment. You can admire people, you can learn from them, but you must never stop questioning them. Most importantly, never stop questioning yourself. So what do we do with all this uncertainty? We embrace it. We stop measuring our worth by how right we are. We stop defending our egos with rigid identities. We choose values that allow room for error and transformation. Values like curiosity, humility, and adaptability. Because if you're not willing to be wrong, you're not willing to be better. Manson suggests building mental habits that nurture this mindset. Challenge your assumptions regularly. Get comfortable saying, "I don't know." Seek disagreement, not as an attack, but as a gift. Update your beliefs when new evidence emerges, and be more interested in what's true than in appearing correct. A belief that can't survive honest questioning isn't worth holding on to. It's not weakness, that's wisdom. In the final reflection of this chapter, Manson returns to a truth we all feel but rarely confront. We want to feel certain about who we are, about what's right, about the fact that we're on the good side of every argument. But certainty is cheap, it's easy, and it's often false. So what if you chose instead to make peace with being wrong? What if you let go of the need to be the hero of your story and became a humble seeker instead? Because when you stop pretending to have all the answers, your life transforms. It stops being a performance about being right. It becomes a real journey of becoming. A journey grounded in truth, in learning, in grace. Not perfect, but honest. Not rigid, but free. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward if someone is better than you at something. It's likely because they've failed at it more than you have. Mark Manson, we live in a world obsessed with success. You scroll through curated victories. On social media, admiring polished moments and filtered milestones. We inhale biographies of entrepreneurs and celebrities, hungry for a taste of their triumphs. We are trained to glorify the end result, the achievements, the accolades, while barely acknowledging what it took to get there. And in this culture of glorified outcomes, failure is painted as something to avoid. We're told to sidestep it, to outsmart it, to be so prepared and so manifested that failure becomes impossible. But Mark Manson tears this illusion apart. He tells us the uncomfortable, liberating truth. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the path to it. Manson opens this chapter with a brutally honest loop that forms the basis of all meaningful growth. Action, failure, learning, adjustment, repeat. This is the cycle that creates improvement. Whether you're writing your first book, navigating a new relationship, starting a business, learning a new language, or trying to become a better listener, the rule is universal. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. There is no progress without missteps, no evolution without error. Growth is not the result of avoiding failure. It's the consequence of passing through it again and again. One of the most counterintuitive but powerful ideas in this chapter is that action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action. Most people believe, I'll do it when I feel ready. They wait for inspiration, for confidence, for the perfect moment. I'll start writing when I feel inspired. I'll go to the gym once I'm motivated. But Manson flips this conventional thinking on its head. Start writing, and then you'll feel inspired. Show up at the gym, and motivation will find you there. Take one small step, no matter how awkward, and suddenly momentum builds. Action is not the result of clarity, it's the catalyst. And this shift in mindset is everything. It means you don't have to wait anymore. You don't need to feel confident, creative, or courageous. You just need to move, even if it's messy, even if you fail. That's where Manson introduces the do something principle. It's a mindset born out of his own battle with procrastination and creative paralysis. When fear or indecision strikes, most of us freeze. We binge, we scroll, we numb. We wait for the stars to align, but Manson trained himself to bypass that paralysis by doing something, anything. Write one sentence, answer one email, do a 5-minute stretch. Make the awkward phone call. That one small action might feel insignificant, but it cracks open the mental door. Action is not just the outcome of motivation, it's the source. This principle, simple as it sounds, can completely shift the course of your day. People don't actually fear failure itself. They fear what failure says about them. If I fail, it means I'm not good enough. If I fail, people will laugh at me. If I fail, it proves I was never worthy in the first place. But Manson reframes failure for what it really is: data. It's not a judgment. It's not personal. It's information. It tells you what doesn't work. It reveals your limits. It shows you what needs to change. If you can stop attaching your identity to the outcome, you can see failure as feedback instead of condemnation. You will grow faster than most people even dare to dream. Manson shares his personal failure story to bring this truth to life. For years, he chased the dream of becoming a rock star. He poured his soul into writing songs, performing gigs, designing CDs, and building a fan base. He gave it everything he had, but it never took off. Eventually, he had to let that dream go, not in bitterness, but in clarity. Because what he realized was that he didn't love the actual process of being a musician. He loved the idea of being admired. And that failure, as painful as it was, gave him something no success could have: self-awareness. It revealed what truly mattered to him writing. It's not lyrics, but truth, ideas, connection, and that became his life's work. Sometimes failure doesn't just reroute you, it reveals you. Let's be honest, many of us don't avoid failure because it's painful. We avoid it because we're terrified of looking stupid. We're afraid of being seen struggling, of being laughed at, of making cringe-worthy mistakes. But the truth is universal. Everyone looks dumb when they're new at something. Everyone stumbles at the beginning. Everyone sucks before they get better. It's looking awkward, falling flat, fumbling forward. This is the tax you pay for growth. Trying to skip. It is like trying to swim without getting wet. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to keep going. Behind every great success is a mountain of private failures. Writers whose best-selling books were their fifth or sixth attempt. Athletes who trained for over a decade before getting noticed. Entrepreneurs who built multiple failed businesses before they struck gold. Parents who felt like failures before they found their rhythm. These failures don't make headlines. They aren't on Instagram, but they're there. And Manson drives this point home. The person who fails the most learns the most. Period. So how do we begin reframing failure? Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what will I learn? What lesson will this failure unlock? What truth will it expose? What story will I tell from this? What will it prepare me for next? When your values are aligned, when you're choosing the right problems as discussed in earlier chapters, even pain becomes progress. Even pain becomes meaningful. So Manson leaves us with a closing reflection that flips the whole narrative. What if failure wasn't your enemy? What if it was your secret weapon? What if it was the tuition you paid for progress? Because the truth is, failure isn't the end. It's the test. It's the teacher. It's the initiation into the life you're trying to build. Most people will never create that life not because they lack talent or resources or intelligence, but because they were too afraid to fail in front of others. But you don't have to be like them, not anymore. Because once you understand that failure is not a dead end, but a doorway once, you accept that failure is the way forward, you're already further ahead than the person still sitting still, waiting to feel ready. Chapter 8. The importance of saying no. The more options we're given, the less satisfied we become with whatever we choose. Mark Manson, let's begin with an uncomfortable but necessary truth. You can't care about everything. Can't be everything to everyone. You can't say yes to every opportunity, every cause, every relationship, every emotion, or every shiny possibility that comes your way. If you try to, you will eventually drown not just in your responsibilities, but in burnout, resentment, confusion, and a pervasive sense of meaninglessness. This is where Mark Manson draws a critical line in the sand. Your life isn't just shaped by what you say yes to, it's defined. It's just as much by what you reject. This chapter opens with a counterintuitive idea that flips modern ideas of freedom. On their head, we tend to think freedom means more options, more opportunities, and more openness. But Manson argues that real freedom comes not from saying yes to everything, but from having the strength and clarity to say no. Without that, your yes loses its value. If you agree to every request, enter every relationship, and chase every path that looks good on the surface, you won't build depth in any of them. Saying yes to everything is, paradoxically, how you end up with nothing meaningful. Because real focus, he says, is a form of love. And real love, whether in work, relationships, or purpose, requires exclusivity. It requires you to say no to all the other options. Manson dives deeper into this idea by referencing psychologist Barry Schwartz's concept of the paradox of choice. In today's world, we're surrounded by infinite options. In theory, this should liberate us, but in practice, it paralyzes us. Too many paths lead to no direction. Too many freedoms create anxiety. Too many dating apps create shallow romantic experiences. Too many career options create professional confusion. And too many belief systems to choose from often leave us with none we truly commit to. This is why saying no is not just helpful, it's essential. It narrows the field. It sharpens your values. It tells you who you are, without rejection. There is no identity. One of the most powerful sections of this chapter is how Manson applies this principle to love. We tend to idealize relationships that involve total acceptance, unconditional love that never pushes back, never sets boundaries. But Manson dismantles this romanticized notion. He insists that healthy relationships require healthy rejection. Why? Because true intimacy only exists between two people who have clearly defined boundaries, who are honest about what they need and what they can't tolerate, and who are secure enough to know that disagreement is not danger. When we're too afraid to say no in love, We either abandon ourselves to keep the peace or try to control the other person to avoid discomfort. Both of those paths lead to dishonesty and resentment. But when we say no with clarity and respect, we create space for a much deeper and more honest yes. Manson then drives home the idea that rejection isn't just unavoidable light's constant. Every decision you make is a rejection of all the other options. Every time you commit to one belief, you deny others. Every time you spend time doing one thing, you're saying no to everything else you could have done with that hour. Rejection is not cruelty, it's clarity. The real question is not, how can I avoid hurting someone by saying no? The real question is, can I reject with honesty and respect and trust that doing so serves both of us better in the long run? Bring this principle to life. Manson shares a personal story from his time living in Japan. He was in a relationship with a woman who was kind, smart, and beautiful. There was nothing wrong on paper, but deep down, he knew he wasn't fully in it. For months, he avoided breaking up with her, paralyzed by guilt, uncertainty, and fear of causing pain. But his indecision only made things worse. The tension built. Resentment crept in. His silence became dishonesty. When he finally ended it, the guilt hit him like a wave. But so did relief, because he had finally stopped betraying himself. He had said no, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. And in doing so, he made space for something more honest for both of them. At its core, this chapter isn't just about personal boundaries or ending relationships. It's about values. Every time you say no to something meaningless, you're saying yes to something that matters. Saying no to instant gratification means saying yes to long-term growth. Saying no to shallow validation means saying yes to self-respect. Saying no to toxic people means saying yes to peace. Saying no to easy paths means saying yes to meaningful struggle. Every no is a vote for your future self. Every no sharpens who you are. Of course, saying no isn't easy. It's not pretend otherwise. It makes you vulnerable, exposes you to judgment. It risks conflict and misunderstanding. But Manson emphasizes that vulnerability is the price of authenticity. If you want deep relationships, aligned work, a purpose-driven life, few can't fake your way there with polite half-truths and constant people-pleasing. You have to choose, and choosing always comes with loss. But that loss is the price of integrity. That said, Manson also offers a guide on how to say no without being a jerk. Saying no doesn't mean being cold or callous. It's not about rejection for rejection's sake. It's about honesty. Be clear, not cruel. Be firm, not defensive. Be respectful, not apologetic. Yet most importantly, don't guilt yourself. Afterward, you don't owe everyone access to your time, your energy, or your emotional labor, but you do owe yourself the truth. And if you honor that truth, you can start making choices that build a life you actually want to live. So here's the closing question of this chapter. What have you been saying yes to out of fear, that you need to start saying no to out of self-respect? Every no that comes from clarity and courage is a yes to something greater, a clearer path, a stronger boundary, a deeper relationship, a more authentic life. You don't need to please everyone. You don't need to do it all. You just need to decide what matters. You decide what matters and reject everything that doesn't. Your fucks are limited. Chapter 9. And then you die. You will die. And that's because you were fortunate enough to have lived. Mark Manson, let's pause for a moment. Really pause. Put down the self-help routines, the productivity hacks, the goals, the to-do lists. Let go of your ambitions and your anxieties, your timelines and your aspirations. Let's strip it all away and hold one raw, simple truth in our hands. You are going to die. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, or even this decade. One day unexpected or expected, your story will end, and everything you care about, everything you spent your time, energy, and emotions on will vanish. That single truth slices through the noise of modern life and peels away every illusion. And in the piercing clarity it brings, Mark Manson invites us to see finally what truly matters. The chapter opens with a deeply personal and jarring experience from Manson's life. One day, he received a phone call telling him that one of his closest friends, Josh, had died. There was no warning, no slow buildup, no opportunity to say goodbye, just gone. In the days that followed, Manson didn't spiral into fear or self-help cliches. What he experienced was something deeper, quieter, more profound, a slow unraveling of urgency. The things he used to stress over work, goals, image, petty conflicts, suddenly seemed hollow, meaningless. They dissolved in the rawness of grief. But beneath that silence, a different clarity emerged. Clarity about what he valued. Clarity about who and what truly mattered in the short, fragile time we're given. Death, Manson explains, is the ultimate values filter. When you remember that you're going to die, it changes how you live. You stop pretending that your time is infinite. You stop putting off what matters. You stop wasting your energy trying to please everyone. You stop giving your fucks to noise. It reveals what is truly important by shining a merciless light on everything that isn't. If something won't matter when you're gone, why are you letting it take up space in your life now? And while we're often encouraged to think about our legacy, what we'll leave behind, Manson doesn't romanticize the idea. It reminds us that most of us will be forgotten within a generation or two. Even the famous fade eventually. And that's not a tragedy, it's just reality. The goal of life, then, isn't to be remembered forever. It's to live well while we're here. That means being present with the people who matter. Doing work that resonates with your values. Letting go of petty resentments and Instagram-worthy aspirations. Living now, not in some future fantasy. We're all just a temporary arrangement of dust and atoms bumping into each other, he writes. And yet, in those collisions, when we love, when we create, when we show up, something divine can be found to deepen this point. Manson shares the story of Vasily Grossman, a Russian writer and philosopher who survived some of the darkest periods of human history, Stalin's purges, World War II, the Holocaust, and yet Grossman came to a stunning conclusion. Even in suffering, even in the face of death, there is still meaning. Not in big triumphs or sweeping philosophies, but in the smallest acts. Cooking for someone you love, watching a bird take flight, sharing a kind word. The meaning of life isn't found in control, achievement, or victory. It's found in how we show up, moment to moment, in the ordinary. Because that's all we really get, ordinary moments that we either meet with presence or let slip by unnoticed. This chapter also circles back to one of the book's core themes, responsibility. Once you truly accept that death is guaranteed, something inside you shifts. You begin to understand that you are 100% responsible for how you spend your time, not someday. Not when the timing feels perfect, not after the promotion or the vacation or the healing. Right now. You can't outsource your fulfillment to someone else. You can't keep postponing what really matters. You can't wait for a second chance that might never come. Death turns every maybe later into a lie. If something matters. To use it, if someone matters, love them. If a dream matters, start it. If change is needed, make it. No one else will do it for you. No one else will live your life for you. And you don't get forever. There's also a deep soul-level relief that comes with accepting your own mortality. When you accept death, you stop trying so hard to be extraordinary. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, to be perfect, to make some grand splash in the world just to be remembered. Instead, you begin focusing on what actually feels meaningful, on helping the people you love, on doing what you care about, on showing up with integrity and depth. Ironically, it's in embracing your smallness, your impermanence, that you open the door to living with the greatest authenticity. Because life was never about being everything. It was about being real while you're here. And so, Manson leaves us with the final question, the one that ties the entire book together. The one that distills the core of everything we've read so far. What will you give your fucks to? Before you die, you will die. That's not negotiable. But how you live until then is no one else, no parent, no institution, no lover, no job can answer that question for you. Only you know what's worth your time, your energy, your care. Only you can decide what actually matters. And when you choose that with honesty, when you give your limited, sacred fucks to what actually deserves them, you've already won. You are going to die. And strangely, that's the greatest gift this book can give you, because it wakes you up. It forces you to live. Not by pretending everything's fine, not by chasing perfection, not by avoiding pain or seeking constant happiness, but by facing your fears, by choosing your values. It's by saying no to the endless distractions and yes to the few things that actually matter. That is the subtle art, not of giving no fucks, but of giving the right ones and letting all the rest fade away. Final reflection and series conclusion: the desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. Mark Manson, we began this journey thinking we were going to learn how to not care. That maybe, with the right tricks and mindset hacks, we could shut off the stress, silence the noise, and finally be free. But as each chapter unfolded, it became clear, this book isn't about apathy, it's about selectivity. It's about courage. It's about learning to care deeply, but only about the right things. It's about choosing truth over comfort. Real values over fake positivity. Mark Manson never promised us happiness. He offered something harder and far more important: truth. The uncomfortable kind, the kind that asks more of you, the kind that takes away your excuses and hands you your responsibility, the kind that won't let you sleepwalk through life anymore, the kind that invites you to live fully and honestly. So now, let's trace the road we just walked together. Chapter 1. Don't try, we began with a contradiction. The pursuit of constant positivity, Manson said, is itself a form of suffering. We met Charles Bukowski, the self-destructive poet who found success not through belief in himself, but through radical honesty with his own flaws. From him, we learned something important. You have limits, and that's okay. You don't need to be everything. Freedom isn't pretending you can do it all, it's choosing what truly matters and letting the rest fall away. Chapter 22. Happiness is a problem. This chapter shattered the modern myth of permanent happiness. Manson reminded us that pain is a part of life. Suffering isn't a glitch, it's the engine of growth. What gives our lives meaning is not the absence of problems, but the willingness to solve better ones. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at, it's a process. A byproduct of engaging with your problems, finding value in the struggle itself. Chapter 3. You are not special in a world obsessed with uniqueness and constant self-validation. This chapter hit hard. It told us that believing you're extraordinary only creates more pressure. It turns ordinary problems into personal tragedies. But when you accept your ordinariness, you gain freedom. You stop needing to prove yourself. You start doing the work day in and day out. This chapter reminded us that greatness is found in humility, not hype. Chapter 4. The value of suffering. We explored the truth that not all suffering is equal. Some pain is meaningful, some is wasted. Manson challenged us to examine what we're suffering for. Are our problems grounded in reality? Are they worth facing? Because he said, the quality of your life is defined by the quality of the problems you're willing to deal with. Choose your suffering wisely, because you're going to suffer either way. Chapter 5. You are always choosing. This chapter brought us to a powerful pivot point. We don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we always choose how we respond. Responsibility doesn't mean blame, it means ownership. You might not be at fault for your pain, but you're still responsible for what you do with it. That's how we reclaim power over our lives. That's where change begins. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I here. Manson dismantled our ego's attachment to certainty. He reminded us that certainty is the enemy of growth. If we want to grow, we have to be willing. To be wrong, we have to let our beliefs evolve. Let our identity shift. The smartest people, he said, are not the ones with all the answers, but the ones most willing to change their minds. Growth starts with the humility to say, I used to believe that, but now I see it differently. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward. This chapter flipped our understanding of failure. We learned that people who succeed most are the ones who fail most because they act, they try, they learn. Motivation doesn't precede action, it follows it. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the path to it. If you're not failing, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not growing. Chapter 8. The importance of saying no. This was the quiet, underrated chapter, yet perhaps the most powerful. We realize that our lives are defined not just by what we choose, but by what we reject. Saying no to distractions, to toxic relationships, to empty goals. That's how we create room for depth, for meaning, for values that last. It takes courage to say no, but without it, we end up living someone else's life, not our own. Chapter 9. And then you die, and then we face the final truth. One day you will die. Everything you care about will disappear. That truth isn't morbid, it's clarifying. It reminds us that time is short, that our fucks are limited. Today is all we really have. Manson urged us to let death sharpen our awareness, our focus, and our values. Because when you live with mortality in view, you stop wasting time. You stop pretending. You start living. Core messages and takeaways. Let's bring all of it together. If the subtle art of not giving a FCK asterisk left you with anything, let it be this. You have limited fucks to give. Your time, energy, and care are finite. Don't waste them on things that don't matter. Pick your problems deliberately. Choose your values with intention. Let your suffering serve something real. Not caring isn't apathy, it's focus. It's not about being indifferent. It's about caring fiercely, but only about what's truly worth it. It's about saying this matters, that doesn't. Growth is uncomfortable. You will get it wrong. You will fail. You will face pain, and that's okay. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in discomfort, in challenge. In trying again, radical responsibility is freedom. You don't control the universe, but you control how you show up in it. The moment you stop blaming and start owning your life, that's the moment everything changes. Death gives life meaning. You are not here forever. That's not a reason to despair, it's a reason to pay attention. Let mortality be your compass. Let it strip away the noise. Let it help you see what actually matters. Why this book resonates. This book doesn't promise bliss. It doesn't offer fairy tale transformations or manifest your dreams. BS. It doesn't tell you that you're special or that the universe is waiting to give you everything you want. Instead, it tells the brutal, liberating truth. You will suffer. You will struggle. You will fail. You will die. And in that mess, if you're willing to face it, there's freedom. There's clarity. There's beauty. Because once you stop pretending life is about comfort or applause, you get to start living it on your own terms, the ongoing journey. So, where do you go from here? You start small. You stop giving fucks to the stuff that doesn't matter. You start giving them intentionally, powerfully to the few things that do. And when it gets hard in it, will you return to the most important question? What is truly worth my limited time, energy, and life? Ask that question every day. Answer it with honesty. Choose accordingly. Final invitation. If this book stirred something in you, even if just for a moment, then honor that spark. Live by it. Don't let the noise of the world drown it out. Remember, you are not special. You will suffer. You will fail. You will be wrong. You will die, and still, within all of that, you hold the power to shape a life that matters. You have the power to say no to the bullshit, to say yes to the real. It's to decide. With heart and clarity, where your limited fucks will go, spend them wisely.